They said they couldn't afford to take two, so my sister got the vacation. When they returned, they found out I'd left for good and taken every piece I ever funded with me. I never thought I'd be writing this story, but here we are. My name is Amanda, and this is about how I finally stood up to my family after 28 years of being their personal ATM and emotional punching bag. Let me start from the beginning. I'm the older daughter by 3 years, and my sister Jessica has always been the golden child. Where I was studious and responsible, she was charming and spontaneous. Where I saved every penny and worked part-time jobs through high school and college. She spent money like water and never worried about consequences because someone would always bail her out. That someone was usually me. After graduating with a degree in computer science, I landed a great job at a tech company in Austin. Meanwhile, Jessica dropped out of college sophomore year 3 years ago to pursue her artistic dreams, which mainly consisted of posting lifestyle content on Instagram and working part-time at a boutique owned by mom's friend. She still lived at home at 25, contributing nothing to household expenses while I've been paying my parents $800 a month since I was 20 to help with a mortgage. You'd think this arrangement would earn me some respect or gratitude, but you'd be wrong. Instead, I was constantly lectured about being selfish with my money, antisocial for working long hours, and called for not being more supportive of Jessica's endeavors. When I bought myself a decent car after driving a 15-year-old Honda for years, Mom called it showing off. When I moved into my own apartment, Dad said I was abandoning the family. But I kept paying, I kept helping, I kept hoping that eventually they'd see that I was the responsible one, the one who'd earned their pride and appreciation. The breaking point came 6 months ago when Mom announced that she and Dad were planning a 2-week European vacation for their 30th anniversary. They've been talking about it for years, and I was genuinely excited for them. They deserved a nice trip after working so hard their whole lives. We're taking Jessica with us, Mom announced over Sunday dinner. She needs some inspiration for her blog, and the photos will be amazing. I looked up from my plate, confused. What about me? Dad shifted uncomfortably. Well, honey, we can only afford to take one of you girls, and Jessica really needs this right now. She's been so stressed about finding her path. I could pay for my own ticket, I offered. Though even as I said it, something cold was settling in my stomach. Mom waved her hand dismissively. Oh, Amanda, you know how you get when you travel. All anxious and worried about schedules and budgets. Jessica will be so much more fun to have alone. Besides, you can afford to take your own vacation anytime you want. I sat there in stunned silence as they continued planning their trip, discussing restaurants Jessica had found on Pinterest and museums she wanted to visit for her content. Nobody asked what I wanted to see or where I'd like to go. It was as if I wasn't even there. That night, I went home to my apartment and really looked at my life. I'd been paying my parents' mortgage for almost 10 years. I bought Jessica's car when hers broke down and she couldn't get financing. I'd paid for countless dinners, gifts, and emergencies. I'd furnished half of my parents' house when they needed new appliances and furniture. I had receipts for everything, saved in meticulous files because I'm obsessive about finances. And what did I have to show for it? A family who saw me as a checkbook with legs, too boring and anxious to deserve a spot on their dream vacation. The next morning, I started making plans. But first, I needed to really understand the full scope of what I've been giving over the years. I spent the entire weekend going through my financial records, credit card statements, and bank accounts. I created a spreadsheet that would have made my accounting professor proud, categorizing every single purchase I'd made for my family. The numbers were staggering. Beyond the $96,000 I'd calculated for mortgage payments, there was another $47,000 in direct purchases. The refrigerator had cost $2,800. The living room furniture set was $4,200. Jessica's car had been $18,000 when I co-signed and then taken over the payments after she defaulted. Her laptop, camera equipment for her content creation, designer clothes for special occasions, medical bills when she didn't have insurance. It all added up. I'd also been covering smaller expenses that seemed insignificant individually, but were substantial in aggregate. Family dinners, where I always picked up the check. Grocery runs when Mom mentioned they were running low on something. Gas money for Jessica when she was between jobs. birthday and Christmas gifts, not just for immediate family, but for their friends and extended relatives. I become the family's unofficial treasury, funding everything from Dad's golf club membership to Mom's spa days. Looking at those numbers, I felt simultaneously vindicated and sick. Vindicated because it proved I wasn't overreacting. I really had been carrying this family financially for years. Sick because I realized how completely I'd been taken advantage of and how willing I'd been to let it happen. The worst part was remembering all the times they'd made me feel guilty for not giving more. When I'd hesitated to co-sign Jessica's car loan, Mom had said I was being jealous and selfish. When I'd suggested they create a budget instead of calling me for emergency money, Dad had accused me of acting superior and forgetting where I came from. I'd internalized their criticism and pushed down my own needs for so long that I'd forgotten what my actual priorities were. When was the last time I bought myself something nice without feeling guilty? When was the last time I'd taken a vacation without worrying about missing family obligations or unexpected expenses they might need help with? That Sunday, I drove past the house where I'd grown up and really looked at it with fresh eyes. The exterior was well maintained, the landscaping was perfect, and Jessica's car sat in the driveway looking spotless. This was not the home of a family struggling financially. This was the home of a family who had gotten very comfortable living beyond their means, because someone else was always there to catch them when they fell. I thought about my own apartment, modest, practical, furnished with pieces I bought secondhand or on sale. I'd been living like a college student while funding my family's upper-middle-class lifestyle. The disparity was grotesque. Monday morning, I called my company's HR department and asked about extended remote work options. Turns out they'd been wanting to expand their Austin presence anyway and were happy to let me work from anywhere, as long as I maintained my productivity levels. That conversation opened up possibilities I'd never seriously considered before. I could live anywhere. I could start fresh in a place where nobody knew me as the responsible daughter or Jessica's sister. I could build relationships based on who I actually was, rather than what I could provide. I started researching cities with good tech scenes and lower costs of living than Austin. Denver kept coming up in my searches. Great job market, outdoor recreation opportunities, reasonable housing costs. I visited once for a conference and fallen in love with the mountains, but had never considered it as a potential home because it felt too far from family obligations. Now, that distance seemed like a feature, not a bug. The next step was understanding my legal position. I made an appointment with a lawyer who specialized in family disputes and asset recovery. I brought my spreadsheet, my receipts, and photos of everything I'd purchased over the years. "This is quite thorough," she said, flipping through my documentation. "Most people don't keep records like this." "I've always been obsessive about finances," I explained. "I scan and file everything. Lucky for you." Now let me explain how gift law works in Texas. What I learned was fascinating and infuriating. Legally, when you purchase something as a gift, you retain ownership unless you explicitly transfer it through a legal document where the recipient can prove it was intended as a permanent gift. Most family transactions don't involve contracts or formal transfers. They're based on assumptions and informal agreements. The challenge, the lawyer explained, is proving intent. If your family claims these were gifts intended to transfer ownership, it becomes a matter if he said, she said. "But I have proof that I was just helping out temporarily," I said, pulling out printed emails and text messages. "Look at this exchange about the refrigerator," Mom texted. "Thanks for covering this until we can pay you back. And here's Dad saying he'd make it up to me when his bonus came through." The lawyer smiled. "This changes everything. If they acknowledge these as loans or temporary assistance, you have a much stronger case for reclaiming the property." I left her office feeling empowered in a way I hadn't experienced in years. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't selfish. I was someone who had been systematically taken advantage of, and I had every right to reclaim what was mine. Over the next few days, I started making concrete plans. I researched moving companies that specialized in delicate situations, families splitting up, asset divisions, situations where discretion and speed were important. I found one with excellent reviews and scheduled a consultation. The moving coordinator, a woman named Patricia, was professional and understanding. "We see this more often than you'd think," she said. Adult children who've been supporting parents and need to reclaim their contributions. The key is having proper documentation and moving quickly to avoid confrontations. How quickly? I asked. Ideally, you want everything out within 24 to 48 hours. The longer it takes, the more opportunity there is for interference or legal complications. I scheduled the move for the Wednesday after my family left for Europe. That would give me a full day to oversee everything and make sure nothing was missed or damaged. The hardest part was acting normal during family dinners leading up to their trip. I sat through multiple conversations about their itinerary, Jessica's excitement about the photo opportunities, and their speculation about which restaurants they try. Nobody asked about my life, my work, or how I was feeling about being excluded from this major family experience. During one particularly painful dinner, Mom showed me photos of a boutique hotel they booked in Paris. "It's so charming," she gushed. Jessica found it on some travel blog. "The rooms are tiny, but the location is perfect." "It looks lovely," I said, genuinely meaning it. "We almost upgraded to a suite that could fit 3 people," Dad added, "but it was just too expensive. Maybe next time we can all go together." The casual way he said "maybe next time," while making no concrete plans or commitments, revealed everything I needed to know about my place in this family. I was an afterthought at best, a financial resource at worst. Jessica, meanwhile, had been posting constant updates on social media about her upcoming European adventure. Photos of her new outfits, screenshots of Instagram posts from locations they'd be visiting, countdown posts about how many days until departure. Each post got dozens of likes and comments from friends telling her how lucky she was and how much they'd miss her. Nobody was posting about missing me because nobody knew I'd originally been excluded from this trip. Then I started researching. I looked into every major purchase I'd made for the family over the years. The refrigerator I bought when theirs died 3 years ago. Legally mine since I had the receipt and had paid for it directly. Same with the living room furniture set, the dining room table, the washer and dryer, Jessica's MacBook Pro, the new TV in the family room, and about 30 other items totaling nearly $40,000. I also called a lawyer to make sure I understood my rights. Turns out, when you purchase something as a gift, you retain ownership unless you explicitly transfer it through a legal document. Most families don't bother with paperwork for gifts, which worked in my favor. Next, I found a beautiful apartment in Denver. I'd always wanted to live in Colorado, but had never seriously considered it because I felt obligated to stay close to family. The mountains, the outdoor activities, the thriving tech scene, it was everything I dreamed of. I put in my notice at my current apartment, scheduled the movers, and started a new job search in Denver while maintaining my remote work arrangement. Everything fell into place with an ease that felt like the universe was finally working in my favor. 2 weeks before their departure, I had dinner with the family one last time. They were giddy with excitement, showing me their itinerary and all the clothes Jessica had bought for the trip using Mom's credit card. Nobody asked how I was doing or what was new in my life. "Make sure to take lots of pictures," I said, smiling genuinely for the first time in months. "Oh, we will," Jessica bubbled. "I'm going to get so much content out of this. My follower count is going to explode. I'm sure it will." I agreed. They left on a Tuesday morning. I helped them load their suitcases into Dad's car and waved goodbye from the driveway. As soon as their taillights disappeared around the corner, I pulled out my phone and ended a call. "Hi, this is Amanda Mitchell. I'd like to schedule a pickup for tomorrow morning." The moving company I'd hired specialized in delicate situations. They were professional, efficient, and asked no questions. I had a complete inventory of everything I purchased, along with receipts and photos. The lawyer had prepared official documentation of my ownership claims, just in case there were any disputes later. On Wednesday, they arrived with a truck and carefully removed every single item I or bought for the family. The refrigerator, dishwasher, and washer-dryer set required special handling, but they managed it beautifully. The furniture was wrapped and loaded with expert care. Even smaller items like the coffee maker, blender, and Jessica's laptop were packed safely. By Thursday evening, my parents' house looked like it had been hit by the world's most selective tornado. All the family photos remained on the walls, along with anything my parents or Jessica had purchased themselves. But the major appliances were gone, replaced by gaping spaces and disconnected wires. The living room had a couch and coffee table, their old ones from the garage, but the entertainment center, TV, and sound system had vanished. The dining room held only 4 chairs around a small table they kept in storage. Walking through the house one final time, I felt a complex mix of emotions. There was satisfaction in seeing the physical evidence of how much I contributed over the years. You really notice a refrigerator's absence. But there was also sadness. This house held decades of memories, and I was effectively erasing myself from their daily lives. I paused in Jessica's room, looking at the space where her desk used to be. I bought her that desk when she started community college, along with a matching chair and lamp. I'd wanted her to have a proper workspace, somewhere that would inspire her to focus on her studies. She'd used it mainly as a display surface for her makeup collection and a charging station for her various electronic devices. Her old desk was now back from the garage, a tiny wobbly thing from when she was in middle school. Her laptop was sitting on it, looking oversized and precarious. I'd left the laptop because it felt too personal, too directly connected to her work, even though I paid for it. But looking at the setup now, I wondered if I'd been too generous. Moving to my parents' bedroom, I saw the gaps where the new dresser and nightstands had been. They'd reverted to the old furniture they'd been using for 20 years, pieces that were showing their wear and no longer matched the room's updated paint and decor. The contrast was stark and would be impossible to ignore. I spent extra time in the kitchen, which had been transformed the most dramatically. The old refrigerator that had been in the garage was now center stage, a white builder grade model from 1998 that barely fit the family's needs, even when I was in high school. The countertops looked bare without the coffee maker, blender, and stand mixer I'd bought over the years. Even the microwave was gone, replaced by a countertop model from their first apartment that took up valuable prep space. The irony wasn't lost on me that this kitchen had been the site of so many family dinners where I'd been made to feel inadequate or ungrateful. Now it looked exactly like what it was without my contributions. The kitchen of a family living paycheck to paycheck, making do with old appliances and cramped spaces. I took photos of everything, not out of malice, but as documentation. If my family tried to claim I'd taken more than I'd bought, or if they attempted any legal action, I wanted proof of exactly what the house looked like when I left it. As I prepared to leave, I walked through the living room one more time. The old couch they'd retrieved from the garage was a faded floral print that Mom had always hated. It was paired with a coffee table that had ring stains from years of use and a side table that wobbled when you set anything on it. The TV was a small, older model that had been in the guest bedroom, adequate for basic viewing, but nowhere near the size and quality of the one I purchased. The room looked like a time capsule from 15 years earlier, back when my parents were still climbing the financial ladder and couldn't afford the lifestyle they'd grown accustomed to. It was a stark reminder of what their actual economic reality was when they weren't being subsidized by their eldest daughter. I found myself thinking about all the evenings I'd spent in this room, watching movies with my family, or helping Jessica with homework at the coffee table I'd bought to replace their wobbly old one. Those memories felt tainted now, knowing that my family had seen my contributions as obligations rather than gifts, as evidence of my role as the family bank, rather than gestures of love and support. Standing in the doorway, I realized this was probably the last time I'd see this house. Even if my family and I eventually reconciled, which seemed unlikely, our relationship would be fundamentally different. I would never again be the person they called when they needed money or wanted to upgrade their lifestyle. I would never again prioritize their comfort over my own financial security. The house felt smaller somehow, as if removing my contributions had shrunk not just the functionality, but the very sense of possibility. It looked like what it was, a middle-ass home occupied by middle-class people living a middle-class lifestyle. There was nothing wrong with that, but it was a far cry from the upper-middle-class comfort they'd enjoyed with my help. I locked the door behind me and slipped the key through the mail slot along with a detailed note I prepared. Walking to my car, I didn't look back. That chapter of my life was officially closed. I left a note on the kitchen counter, weighted down by the house key I was returning. Mom and Dad, I've taken back the items I purchased over the years. Everything removed was bought and paid for by me, and I have receipts for all of it. I've left copies of the documentation on the counter for your reference. I've moved to Denver and won't be returning. I realize now that my role in this family was to provide financial support while receiving no emotional support in return. I deserve better than that, and I'm finally taking it. Don't worry about the mortgage payments I've been making. I've calculated that over the years I've paid approximately $96,000 toward your house, which more than covers the value of the items I've taken. Consider us even. I hope you enjoyed your vacation. I'm starting my new life. Amanda. P.S. Jessica, your laptop is in your room. Since I'm no longer subsidizing your lifestyle, you might want to consider finding a real job. I drove away Saturday morning, my own belongings loaded into a U-Haul trailer behind my car. I felt lighter with every mile, as if I was shedding years of resentment and disappointment. They returned from Europe on Sunday. My phone started ringing at 11:47 p.m. that night. I was in my new apartment in Denver unpacking boxes and arranging my furniture. Furniture that was actually mine, bought with my own money for my own space. I didn't answer. The calls continued for hours. Mom, Dad, Jessica, even some extended family members who'd apparently been recruited to the cause. I let them all go to voicemail. Monday morning, I finally listened to the messages. Mom was hysterical. Amanda, what have you done? The house is empty. How could you do this to us? We're your family. Dad was angry. This is theft, Amanda. You can't just take things because you paid for them. They were gifts. Jessica was predictably dramatic. You've ruined everything. How am I supposed to work without my computer? You're destroying my career before it even starts. There were 17 voicemails in total, each one more indignant than the last. Not one of them acknowledged that I've been financially supporting the family for years. Not one admitted that excluding me from the vacation had been hurtful. They were entirely focused on what I'd taken, not on what I'd given. I deleted them all and blocked their numbers. Tuesday, I got a call from the lawyer I consulted. Apparently, my parents had contacted the police about stolen property. The officer who took the report was professional but skeptical, especially after the lawyer faxed over all my documentation. Your daughter has receipts for everything, the officer had apparently told my father. She paid for it. She owns it. This is a civil matter at best, and frankly, she's got a stronger case than you do. Wednesday brought emails, long, rambling messages full of guilt trips and emotional manipulation. Mom wrote about how embarrassed she was to have neighbors see the house in its current state. Dad focused on the financial hardship of replacing everything. Jessica's email was a masterpiece of self-absorption, detailing how my selfish behavior was affecting her mental health and creative output. I read them once, then set up an auto-delete filter. I was done being their emotional dumping ground. By Friday, I'd started my new job at a Denver tech startup. The work was challenging and exciting. My colleagues were friendly, and my manager actually seemed interested in my ideas and career development. I was making more money than ever, and for the first time in my adult life, every penny was mine to spend as I chose. 3 weeks later, I received a certified letter from a law firm. My parents were threatening to sue me for the return of their property. I forwarded it to my lawyer with a note. Please handle this however you see fit. He called me the next day, barely suppressing laughter. They don't have a legal leg to stand on, he said. I'll send them a response outlining your documentation and suggest they drop this before they rack up more legal fees they can't afford. That was apparently the end of their legal threats. A month later, my cousin Rachel called me. She was the one family member I'd always gotten along with, and she'd somehow gotten my new number. Amanda, she said carefully. I know there are two sides to every story, but I have to ask, did you really clean out your parents' house while they were on vacation? I took back the things I bought over the years, I said. Everything I removed, I had paid for. There was a long pause. How much stuff are we talking about? I gave her a rough inventory. Another long pause. Jesus. Amanda, I had no idea you'd bought so much for them. They never mentioned it. Are you kidding? They've been telling everyone you stole their belongings out of spite because you weren't invited on vacation. They made it sound like you took family heirlooms and wedding gifts. I left everything that actually belonged to them, I said firmly. Every family photo, every piece of jewelry, every item of sentimental value. I only took things I had receipts for. Rachel was quiet for a moment. You know what? Good for you. I always wondered why you kept giving them money when they treated you like crap. That conversation gave me hope that maybe not everyone would see me as the villain in this story. 2 months later, Jessica called from a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. Amanda, her voice was small, different from the dramatic tone of her voicemails. Please don't hang up. What do you want, Jess? I got a job, she said quietly. At a marketing firm, entry level, but it's a real job with benefits and everything. Congratulations. I wanted to apologize, she continued, the words coming out in a rush. I never realized how much you did for us. I mean, I knew you helped out, but I didn't understand the extent of it until everything was gone and Mom and Dad couldn't replace any of it. I'm home. They're really struggling, Amanda. Dad's talking about taking out a loan to buy a new refrigerator. Mom's been doing laundry at the laundromat because they can't afford a new washer. They managed before I started helping them, I said evenly. They'll figure it out. I know you're angry and you have every right to be, but couldn't you at least help with the basics? Just until they get back on their feet. And there it was. Even when she was apologizing, she was still asking for money. No, I said simply. But Amanda, I spent 10 years being your family's financial safety net, I interrupted. 10 years of my life making sure everyone else was comfortable while being treated like I didn't matter. I'm done. So that's it. You're just going to abandon us? Jessica, you're 25 years old with a job and no major expenses. Mom and Dad are in their 50s with their own income and a partially paid off mortgage thanks to my contributions. You're not abandoned. You're just not being subsidized anymore. She hung up without saying goodbye. 3 months later, I got a Facebook friend request from my high school friend Amanda, who'd apparently been talking to my mom at the grocery store. She sent me a message. Your mom seems to think you had some kind of breakdown and moved away impulsively. She's asking people if they know how to contact you because she's worried about your mental health. Just thought you should know what stories she's spreading. I thanked Amanda and updated my privacy settings. If my family wanted to rewrite history and make me the unstable daughter who'd had a breakdown, that was their choice. The people who mattered knew the truth. 6 months into my new life, I was thriving. I'd been promoted at work, made genuine friends who valued me for who I was rather than what I could provide, and had started hiking regularly in the beautiful Colorado mountains. I bought myself a new car, a nice one that I picked out entirely for my own preferences, and was saving money for the first time in years without feeling guilty about it. I'd also started dating someone I met through a hiking group. Mark was a software engineer like me, financially responsible and refreshingly direct about his feelings. When I told him the story of my family in much less detail, he didn't try to convince me to reconcile or suggest that family should forgive anything. He just said, "Sounds like you made a healthy decision," and changed the subject to our weekend plans. It was exactly the reaction I'd hoped for, but never expected to receive. Last month, Rachel called me again. I wanted to give you a heads up, she said. Your parents are planning to drive out to Denver to surprise you for your birthday. My blood ran cold. How did they get my address? I don't know, but they're convinced that if they just show up and talk to you face to face, they can convince you to come home and work things out. Rachel, I need you to understand something. I don't want to work things out. I don't want them to visit. I've built a new life here, and I'm happy for the first time in years. I get it, she said quickly. That's why I'm warning you. Maybe you could go out of town that weekend. I did better than that. I called my lawyer and had him send a cease and desist letter, making it clear that any attempt to contact me or visit my home would be considered harassment. I also upgraded my apartment building security system and informed the front desk staff that my family was not welcome. My birthday came and went peacefully. If they made the drive to Denver, they never made it past the building's lobby. That was 2 weeks ago. I haven't heard from any of them since, and I'm hoping the message finally got through. The silence has been both peaceful and unsettling. After years of constant communication, phone calls asking for help, texts about family obligations, emails with links to things Jessica wanted me to buy, the complete absence of contact feels strange. I find myself checking my phone more often than usual, not because I want to hear from them, but because the quiet is so unfamiliar. I've started filling that silence with new relationships and activities. The hiking group has become a regular part of my week, and I've joined a book club that meets at a local coffee shop. I'm taking a photography class on weekends, something I've always wanted to try, but never had time for when I was managing everyone else's crisis. Mark has been incredibly supportive through this transition, even though I've been careful not to overwhelm him with the details of my family drama. He's met some of the other hikers and fits in naturally with the group. There's something refreshing about being with people who know me only as Amanda, the software engineer who likes mountain trails and craft beer, not Amanda, the family ATM with complicated guilt issues. I've also been working with a financial advisor for the first time in my life. When you're constantly moving money around to help other people, long-term planning becomes impossible. Now that my income is entirely my own, I'm learning about retirement accounts, investment strategies, and savings goals. It's embarrassing to admit that I'm 28 years old and just now opening my first IRA, but better late than never. The advisor was shocked when I showed her my previous spending patterns. You were essentially supporting a household of 3 adults on top of your own expenses, she said. No wonder you weren't building wealth despite having a good salary. Looking at projections of where I could be financially in 5 or 10 years if I maintain my current savings rate is both exciting and infuriating. Exciting because the numbers are substantial. I could own a home outright, travel extensively, maybe even retire early. Infuriating because it highlights how much of my financial potential I sacrificed for people who never appreciated it. I've been wondering how my family is adjusting to their new reality. According to Rachel's occasional updates, the transition has been rocky. Mom apparently spent the first month after their return making comments to neighbors about how disappointed she was in me, painting herself as the victim of an ungrateful daughter's breakdown. She keeps talking about how much you've changed, Rachel told me during our last conversation. How you used to be so generous and family-oriented, and now you're selfish and cold. She seems genuinely confused about why you left. The fact that my mother can't connect their treatment of me to my departure speaks volumes about her level of self-awareness. In her mind, I'm the one who changed, not the family dynamic that pushed me away. Jessica, meanwhile, has had to confront the reality of being a 25-year-old adult with actual expenses. Rachel mentioned that she's been complaining about having to buy her own groceries and gas, and that she's struggling with the commute to her new job because her car needs repairs she can't afford. She asked me if I thought you'd help with the car situation, Rachel said carefully. I told her that ship had sailed. It's telling that even now, after everything that's happened, Jessica's first instinct is still to look for someone else to solve her problems. The idea that she might need to save money, research financing options, or make lifestyle adjustments to accommodate her actual income seems foreign to her. Dad has apparently been the most pragmatic about the situation, focusing on replacing the essential appliances rather than trying to maintain their previous standard of living. He bought a used refrigerator and washing machine, and they're making do with smaller, older models of everything else. According to Rachel, he's been picking up extra shifts, but worked to cover the unexpected expenses. He seems almost relieved in a way, Rachel observed, like maybe he knew they were living beyond their means, but didn't know how to change it. That comment stayed with me for days. Had my financial help actually trapped my family in an unsustainable lifestyle? Had I enabled them to avoid making the difficult choices that would have led to better long-term financial habits? I think about the years I spent worrying about their mortgage payments, their utility bills, their various emergencies. I remember lying awake at night, calculating whether I could afford to help with this repair or that unexpected expense. I remember the constant stress of being financially responsible, not just for myself, but for 3 other adults who made decisions without considering their ability to pay for the consequences. Meanwhile, they never had to experience that stress because they knew I would always be there to catch them. They never had to say no to a purchase because someone else would cover it. They never had to face the real cost of their choices because the cost was always shifted to me. In trying to help them, I had actually hurt them and myself in the process. People ask me sometimes if I miss my family or regret my decision. The honest answer is complicated. Do I miss having family traditions and people who've known me my whole life? Sometimes. Do I regret standing up for myself and refusing to be taken advantage of? Never. I've learned that being related to someone doesn't give them the right to treat you poorly. I've learned that financial generosity means nothing if it's not paired with basic respect and consideration. Most importantly, I've learned that I'm worth more than the money I can provide to others. My old life was built around making other people comfortable at my own expense. My new life is built around my own values, goals, and happiness. The difference is remarkable. For anyone reading this who's in a similar situation, being taken for granted by family, constantly giving without receiving, feeling like a bank account rather than a person, please know that you have options. You don't owe anyone your financial support, especially if they don't appreciate it. You don't owe anyone your presence in their life if they consistently make you feel unwelcome or unimportant. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is walk away. I don't know if my family will ever understand why I left or acknowledge their role in pushing me away, but I've made peace with the fact that their understanding isn't necessary for my happiness. I'm building new traditions with people who actually want me around. I'm planning vacations that I'm excited about to places I choose with people who value my company. I'm saving money for my own dreams instead of subsidizing other people's. And for the first time in my adult life, I'm exactly where I want to be. Update. It's been almost a year since I moved to Denver, and I wanted to share how things have progressed. Mark and I are talking about moving in together, which is both exciting and terrifying for someone who's never been in a truly healthy relationship. He's met some of my new friends and fits right in with the hiking group. Nobody here knows about my family drama unless I choose to tell them, which is incredibly freeing. Work continues to go well. I've been given some high-profile projects and am being considered for a senior developer position that would come with a significant raise. The irony isn't lost on me that my career flourished once I stopped worrying about everyone else's financial needs. I've also started seeing a therapist, mainly to work through some of the guilt and anger I still carry about my family situation. She's helped me understand that my parents' behavior patterns were established long before I started enabling them, and that my leaving probably created some necessary consequences they'd been avoiding for years. As for my family, the silence has been mostly complete. Rachel updates me occasionally when I ask, but I've learned to limit those conversations because the information usually just makes me sad or angry. Apparently, my parents did eventually replace most of the appliances I had taken, though they bought used items and smaller versions of everything. Jessica is still working at the marketing firm and has apparently gotten a small promotion. The house is functioning, everyone is fed and clothed, and life goes on. They've stopped asking Rachel for my contact information, which suggests they finally accepted that I'm not coming back. Part of me wonders if they ever truly understood why I left, or if they still see me as the daughter who inexplicably became selfish and cruel. But that's their story to tell themselves, and I've stopped trying to control it. My story is different. It's about a woman who spent her 20s supporting people who took her for granted, and her 30s building a life that actually makes her happy. It's about learning the difference between being generous and being used. It's about discovering that you can love your family and still choose not to be part of their dysfunction. I don't know what the future holds, but I know it's mine to decide. And after years of living for other people's expectations and needs, that freedom is worth everything I left behind. Sometimes the best revenge isn't dramatic or immediate. Sometimes it's simply living well without the people who couldn't appreciate you when they had the chance. To anyone who needs to hear this, you are worth more than what you can provide to others. You deserve relationships built on mutual respect and genuine affection. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away from people who can't see your value. Trust me, the view from the other side is worth the journey.